To this computer. Recording in progress. Wow, I'm really getting better at this. Recording in progress. Isn't that fabulous? Okay, so let me tell you what we're doing today if you're ready to begin. Today we're looking at Mishnah or teaching numbers 7, 12, and 14. So first we're going to look at 7, and you may wonder why I'm being selective. I mentioned, I think, in the very early session that we had, that in all of the 6 chapters of Pirke Avot, the Ethics of the Fathers, there's about 128 different teachings by about 65, 68 different sages or great rabbis. So you may say, well, why don't you just go in order? And the answer is that there are some that I consider more interesting, if you will, more applicable, if you will, to a general audience. And there are some that are really very, very specifically meant to be taught as of 2000 years ago, meant to be taught, discussed, etc., by the Jewish community. That doesn't mean that nobody else can study them. It just means that the ones I choose have, in my opinion, the widest application to the wider faith community and not just to the Jewish people. So I try to focus on that. And that's why today we're starting with chapter 1, Mishnah or teaching number 7. So you have access on our WhatsApp group to chapter 1 of Pirkei Avot that comes from a website called Chabad.org. And if you want to go to that, that's fine. Otherwise, I'll be translating everything as we go along. And just remind you, if you have any questions, you can feel free to stop me at any point and ask or make a comment, uh, shine a light on a certain aspect of what we're talking about. That's all good. And I'm happy to accommodate you if you'd like to ask something or make an observation. Ryan, how are you?
Hey, doing well. How you doing?
Thank God. Good, good. I'm very glad to see a lovely group of people, and I appreciate it. So, we're going to the beginning of teaching number 7. And this is a quote or a teaching from Nitai the Arbalite. Basically, it means he's from the Arbel region, which is near Tiberias. There's a Mount Arbel, in Hebrew, Har Arbel. I've been on that mountain, and it's a big tourist attraction. The tradition says that the Messiah will be sighted from the top of Mount Arbel. So thank you for not asking me which Messiah. Thank you very much. We'll keep everybody guessing. But the Jewish tradition is that there will be people, as the Messiah gets closer, people who will sense the closeness of the Messiah, and they will climb Mount Arbel, and they will be able to see him and thereby notify everybody else that the Messiah, the Mashiach, has finally arrived. So it reminds me of the story of a newspaper man who wants to write an article very different than what he's usually written. And he's walking around his community, and lo and behold, he sees a man atop a telephone pole. And he, kind of taps on the pole and he looks up and he says, "Hey, sir, my name is whatever from whatever newspaper. What are you doing up there?" And he says, "Well, I've been hired by this community to wait for the Messiah. So I'm climbed very high so I can see when he's coming." So the newspaperman starts taking out the pad because he senses that this could be very interesting. Oh, really? How long have you been doing this? He says, "Well, a few months. They hired me a few months ago, and I'm waiting, and I got my binoculars, etc. People send me up sandwiches and drinks, and I'm just waiting for the Messiah." So the reporter says, "Do you have any idea when he's going to come? Did they tell you anything about that?" He says, "No, I don't really know when he's going to come, but I was hired to watch for him and let everybody know when he arrives." And the newspaperman says, "That's very, very interesting. Um, does it pay well?" So the man says, "I'm not particularly." So the newspaper man says, "So why do you do it?" And he says, "It's a steady job." And that's pretty much our case. Whatever faith you're in, it's a steady job to be awaiting the Messiah. So we're all doing it from our own Mount Arbel, and uh, and we'll be happy to see him whenever he arrives. So Nitai from the Arbel region of Israel, again near Tiberias, he had the following teaching that he got from his teachers. This is what we've been stressing, that teachers teach their students, the students become the teachers, they have students, etc. And that's how the chain of knowledge continues in the Jewish tradition and in other traditions as well. So what did he teach? Nitai the Arbelite he would say the following three things, and we notice that a lot of the teachings are in triplets, da-da, da-da, and da-da. And we're going to find the next one also is very similar. Nitai the Arbelite would say, distance yourself from a bad neighbor. That's the first of the three things he says. The second thing that he taught was, it kind of sounds similar, do not cleave to a wicked person. So distance yourself from a bad neighbor. Do not cleave to a wicked person. And the third part of his three-part teaching is, and do not abandon belief in retribution, which in other versions that have a different translation a little bit, it says, the part number three, don't despair when punishment is given for wrongdoing. Don't despair. Most people would have the reaction of despairing. Who likes to be punished? Who likes to be corrected? Who likes to be reproved? However you want to term it. Nobody really likes it, but Nitai the Arbelite says that there is don't despair when you sense that God is sending any kind of punishment to you, towards you, for you. Don't despair, and we'll try to understand why he says don't despair, where our natural inclination would be to not be so happy about that coming our way. So let's talk about this distancing ourselves from a bad neighbor, not cleaving to a wicked person. The sages of the Jewish tradition, when I say sages, what I mean is the rabbis of old, if you will. Doesn't mean they're all old rabbis, but the rabbis of old, we're talking centuries ago. We could be talking even 2 millennia ago. Sages, time-honored, great teachers whose teachings continue on and on over the centuries within the Jewish tradition. Sages meaning not just somebody who became a rabbi 12 years ago. We're talking time-honored, venerable scholars who have what to say, and we can see that their lessons are recorded and taught and studied 2,000 years later. So I am not a sage. I may be in 2,000 years, I don't know, but I'm not a sage, and many people living today, great minds, thinkers, scholars, technically are also not sages. They just don't have enough time behind them to be called sages. But the sages, they taught in the Talmud, which we discussed, I think, in the very first gathering that we had. Talmud is 66 different tractates or volumes of Jewish law, Jewish history, etc. They taught the following phrase, woe to the wicked, woe to the neighbor, which means if you're a wicked person, that's tough enough. Not That's not good. But it's even worse than your being wicked is that it may rub off on your neighbor. And that was the sage's way of saying, be careful of the influence of the wicked. Why do you need to be careful? Because you would say, listen, that person may be wicked, but I've got a thick skin and I am impermeable to the wickedness, and I will stay the virtuous person that I am. And it doesn't matter who I'm friends with. They can be the worst person, and even a wicked person may have a very nice aspect to them. You never know. So I grew up in Providence, Rhode Island, not too far from me. Lived a fellow, I won't mention his name. He was the head of some local mafia, and he measured people for cement shoes, and wherever they are now, I don't know. But he What can I tell you? He murdered people. When he died, a reporter, not the one that was at Mount Arbel or the taking the guy at the top of the telephone pole, a reporter went around to his neighborhood, and you know what they said about him? I remember this like I read it 2 seconds ago. They said about him, "Oh, he was he was the nicest man. He was lovely. Every morning he would pass out candies to the kids. He would knew how to fix bicycles, so kids would take their broken bicycles over to him. He knew how to inflate the tires. He was sweet. He would drop off flowers to the widows in the neighborhood. It just so happens that one aspect of him was that he was a murderer. Sorry, but otherwise he was great. A lovely, lovely gentleman. Anyway, so this is the teaching. Be careful of the influence of the wicked, even though they may have nice aspects to them. But if you know that they are people that are not exactly enjoying the smiles of the Lord, if you know what I'm saying, just be very, very careful. They could rub off on you, even while you're confident that no, you will stay as virtuous as you always have been, and you're impervious to their influence. So say the sages, you're probably not impervious to their influence. In the morning prayers that you find in the Jewish prayer books, one of the requests that we have of God, is I'll read it in Hebrew and translate. V'harchikenu me'adam ra u'mechaver ra. We ask God to please distance us from bad people and bad friends. Bad people and bad friends. If I were to put it in modern lingo today, we ask God to please keep a distance from us and toxic people. That could be one way of looking at it. I remember reading about a rabbi of many years ago who was known for couples coming to him for even what would be the simplest of advice, not just about matters of Jewish law, Jewish ritual, what do you do if, what do you do when. He was the kind of a person that a lot of people went to for what you and I would call little things. And one couple went to him and they said, "We're looking to move from our current neighborhood to another neighborhood. What would you say that we're looking at this particular neighborhood within the community?" They knew that the rabbi knew the neighborhood, and they said, "We're very excited to be moving there because," and they gave him a whole list of the house is better than we have now. It even has an in-ground pool. It has a this. It has that. We're so excited to go. Please give us a blessing that we should be successful in our new home. And he said, "Let me just ask you one question. I don't want to know about your pool. I don't want to know about your sunken living room, which could happen if the pool has a leak. But I don't want to know any of the details about your home, balconies, ceilings. Let me ask you a question," he says. "Have you checked out your neighbors? Do you know who amongst whom you will be living?" And of course, they looked at him and they went, "No." And he reminded them how important that is. Important to know who your neighbors are going to be. And that's pretty much what Nitai the Arbalite is talking about. Just be careful of the associations that you have. Don't be so confident that bad people will not rub off on you, because they may and they're likely to, just because of human nature. So you remember Noah and the flood, right? Early chapters of the book of Genesis. Noah is told by God that he needs to build an ark, and according to the Jewish tradition, it took him 120 years to build the ark. So you would say, "Well, it's a long time to build an ark." So you might say, "Well, maybe he was Jewish and he's not that good. He goes into Lowe's or he goes into Home Depot and doesn't even know what he's looking for. So maybe that's why it took him 120 years." No, God says it's going to take you a long time to build it. Build it, drag it on. Why? So that people will come by and say, "Hey, Noah, what are you doing?" "Oh, I'm making an ark." "You're making an ark? For what?" Well, God is going to destroy the world with a flood. Destroy, wow. How do you get on the ark? Well, if you change your behavior, etc., you too can have a spot on the ark. So, according to our tradition, that's why it took 120 years, so that people would be curious, want to know how to avoid the ravages of the flood. How do you get a seat on this ark? And in that way, some of the world would be saved. So, if you know anything about the story, at the beginning of the building of the ark, 8 people were supposed to be on the ark. There's Noah, Mrs. Noah. They had 3 sons, and each son was married. So as he's building and putting the first nail into the ark, 8 people are supposed to be on the ark, and now he's working for 120 years to get more people seated on the ark. So 120 years go by, and according to the Torah narrative, how many people end up on the ark?
Eight.
8. It's the same 8. I would say Noah is a bad salesman. It's 120 years to convince one, but didn't convince any. So the rabbis toss back and forth. Why is it that he wasn't that successful? And there are very interesting conversations amongst the sages as to why he wasn't very successful at convincing people to get on the ark. And one rabbi said something that really struck me, and it has to do with this discussion. He said, it's very possible that Noah didn't confront people because it was a wicked generation, and he was afraid if he's going to get into a discussion with anybody, more than him having an effect on them, he was worried that they would have an effect on him. Their wickedness in that relationship would rub off on him more than he would rub off on them. It's an interesting perspective. And so, again, it's a reminder, just be careful of who you're friends with. There's one more contemporary commentator who says that you have to be careful with what we call friends. I'll say something about that in a moment. That what we call friends could end up being not so much our friends. So what could be our friends? Social media, entertaining, right? We get to express our opinions about all kinds of stuff. We see what this one is doing, this one is thinking. I remember a few weeks ago, I walked into a room with several people whose names I recognize only from our WhatsApp groups here in Efrat. I don't know any of them by name. It's just a few people. Hi, my name is Elon Adler. Who are you? My name is Barbie Berman. Barbie Berman, wow, how's your backache? She said, how do you know about my backache? I said, because you posted about it on WhatsApp. I went over to the next one. Hi, how you doing? I was sorry to hear about your mother. How do you know my mother passed away? Well, because you posted it on Facebook, or you posted it on WhatsApp, whatever. So there are some positive aspects to social media. A cell phone can be a great friend when you're in need. You've got a flat tire or whatever. A cell phone, you need to be in touch, especially here in Israel. The girls' high school where I teach in, we had a staff meeting yesterday, and we were talking about cell phones. How do we take the cell phones away from the girls at the beginning of the day? And what time of the day do we hand them back? During lunch, during recess? Big, big discussion. That discussion unravels every staff meeting that I've ever been to. What do you do with the cell phones? In any case, so we're talking back and forth. Oh, well, let's take them away and give them back at the end of the day. No, you can't, because sometimes parents will hear something that happened around the school and they'll want to be in touch with their kids to make sure their kids are okay. So now what? Well, they shouldn't have their phone. I only mention it to say that sometimes a cell phone can be a friend. Alcohol can start out being a friend. You're nervous. You're whatever. So I'm going to take a little sip, and it'll calm me down. It'll be very nice. Here in Israel, I think medical marijuana, maybe other places too. It's legal, and you can get it, and that in the beginning stages could be a friend. Smoking, other kinds of things could be friends on some level, if you know what I'm saying. but you have to be careful that they don't become uh, your enemies, or they don't become the wicked associations that we are warned about having. Let me mention about the don't despair of punishment, don't abandon belief in retribution, and then I'll be happy to stop if anybody has any questions or observations. Basically, it's saying that in most faith communities, everybody knows that if you do good, you're rewarded with good. In this world, always, could be in the next world, if you believe in the next world. In general, do good and you'll have good. And the opposite is true also, that in general, in a faith community, you don't do so good or you do bad intentionally, etc. There is something that God has to say or do to you to remind you to be good or to remind you to be better. What Nitai the Arbalite is saying is that not all retribution or punishment or reproof, or however you want to call it, all of that is positive on two levels. Level number one, and I don't know how you feel about this, you may say I don't agree. Level number one is the positive nature of this kind of punishment, if you will, just to use one word. One positive aspect of it is that God is honing in on you to try to improve your character. He's honing in on you. So you may say, like Tevye the milkman in the movie Fiddler on the Roof, where the chosen people choose somebody else sometimes, right? Maybe you don't feel like being honed in on. Okay, but it's a way of looking at God trying to focus on you and trying to buff and polish your character. So that could be one aspect of retribution, punishment, reproof, consequence, whatever you want to call it. Another positive aspect of punishment, if you will, is to look at it as a way of cleansing you or me. That God uses that tool in his toolbox to cleanse the soul of the person, to cleanse it. And that's what we in the Jewish community, we have the upcoming holidays of Rosh Hashanah, Day of Judgment, 2 days of judgment. Days in between, Yom Kippur, a week later, a day of asking God for forgiveness, atonement, etc. Basically, we're asking God to take our stained white clothing and remove the stains. Cleansing. We're asking God to cleanse us. And we're asking God to do such a good cleansing job that you can't even tell the stain was ever there. That that's a good cleansing. To take your clothes to a cleaner that can clean your white garments and you get it back and you can't tell where that stain was, that is a hoo-ha. Wow, that's very effective cleansing. So that all of that is what Nitai the Arbalite is saying. Don't be scared of retribution or punishment. Don't be averse to it, because it's coming to do two things. It's coming to buff and polish your character when God tries to correct you. And number two, it's trying to cleanse you and cleanse your soul to the point that you don't have to carry around the stain of whatever it was for the rest of your life. So, having said that, does anybody have any questions, comments, reactions? I'm open to hearing anything.
By the first question that comes to my mind is, who is my neighbor? So I think of Cain and Abel.
Won't you
And
be my neighbor?
right?
Who was that?
Yeah.
Who was that? Was that
Mr.
Mr.
Rogers.
Rogers? Yeah. Yeah, Cain and Abel.
Yeah, I think of Cain and Abel and how am I my brother's keeper type thing, and who is my brother type. So um, we can all say that our neighbor is a physical person next door, but it could also be someone else, that we cross paths with. Correct?
Correct. Yeah. Yeah, it doesn't have to be a neighbor in proximity. We're not talking about a geographical neighbor. It could be somebody across the world, with whom you're Zooming or writing or communicating with. Absolutely. Yeah. It's not talking about the next door. Hi, hey, Hal, could you turn it down? It's not necessarily that kind of a neighbor. It could be anybody that you associate with. Could be people at work, people at the synagogue, church, mosque. Could be anybody with whom you associate, and you sense that the relationship is getting deeper for one reason or another. And as it's getting deeper, you want to have your feelers out to make sure that, they share what you value and they value what you care about, and that there's a certain sense of amicability and you're kind of walking the same road. Yes, I think you're right. You're right. It's not just talking about your physical um, proximity neighbor, but it could be anybody. Yeah, it's a good point. Yes, Bob.
Um, Talking about your neighbor, I was thinking of how Israel was encamped around the tabernacle,
Right.
and you had Simeon when they did the census, the early census, and then they did a latter census, and you saw most all the tribes being either increased or about the same, but you saw Simeon dropped significantly. And
Precipitous.
yeah, and it's like, so one of the comments, and I don't remember where I was reading this, but one of the thoughts was that they were camped next to Korah's group. And I
Oh,
think that
Korach, yes.
Korah,
Korach. Korach and
uh,
his merry men.
yeah, and they're the ones who had the largest, huge drop in their numbers. And it was tied to being neighbors to Korah.
Yes, they were neighbors to wickedness. Korach challenged the status quo, didn't like that he was overlooked for leadership positions, and his cousin Moses and Aaron and Miriam, they all have these big, big jobs, these big titles, and he felt overlooked, overpassed, and he became a very wicked neighbor, unfortunately, and he met his demise by being swallowed up in the earth, if you remember. Him and his merry men. Yeah. But I remember the John Denver song that they played back then where it talked about you fill up my senses. Do you remember this? You fill up my senses. Anyway, I doubt they played it at that time. So, any other thoughts or comments before we move on to number 12? If you're following along, we're going to be touching on number 12, but if you'd like to offer a comment or observation, happy to hear it. Otherwise, we'll go on to number 12.
I do have one last question. Um,
Sure.
to cleave, what does it mean? I know what cleaving means, but I've done some research in the past. It has a deeper meaning than what people think it has. Like
Done some
to
research in the what?
in the past about what cleave means,
Oh, okay.
and it has a deeper meaning than what people think. People just think to grab a hold of, but it's more intense than that. It's to like wrap yourself around it, and you know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? Become
Almost
one with it almost.
identify with it, to kind of
Yeah,
identify with it. You are one with that which is cleaved unto.
right. And I just was wondering what you thought about that.
I think Nitai the Arbalite is kind of warning that that you have to be careful. The closer you get, the closer you get, the closer you get, as you're getting closer to the cleaving part of that relationship. Like you see each other almost 9 times a day or whatever, and you're talking and I can't wait to be with the other person, whatever. We're not talking about a marriage now, we're just human relations. How careful you have to be as you're getting closer to make sure that you're not so thoughtlessly tied to that person. You know, well, they wouldn't lie. They wouldn't do this. They wouldn't do. Of course, I believe that person because they wouldn't X, Y, and Z. So maybe the cleaving has gotten to a point where you can't see any particular fault in that person, and that's not always good. It's not always good. There is a parallel teaching that says, interestingly, that even with wicked people, we can't just, in a sense, toss them away. You know, what can we do to try to get them to change their behavior, to be less wicked, to be not wicked, to be good, decent, upstanding people? So if they don't have any correctors in their life that are willing to engage with them with positivity and, Phil, maybe you shouldn't be doing that because whatever. So on the one hand, we have Nitai the Arbalite who is saying, don't get involved with these people. At the same time, we have many teachings that say that you can't just abandon the wicked. You have to try, but carefully. Try, but carefully. Don't get too close, but try a little bit at a time to see if you can have an impact on the way they live their lives. Maybe you can change them a little bit. So, yeah, I think it's a very important lesson. Not one of the better known. In other words, if you put 100 Jewish people in a room and said, here's the lesson: distance yourself from a bad neighbor, don't cleave to the wicked, don't abandon belief in retribution. Um, how many of you have heard of that? There's 100 average educated Jews in a room. How many of you have heard of that? I don't know that 20 hands would go up. Not every one of these 128 lessons of Pirke Avot has the same notoriety. They don't. Some of them pop out at people, and some. This is not necessarily a pop out kind of a thing. But the next one, many hands would go up for number 12. It says that Hillel and Shammai, these are first century folk, great rabbis, Hillel, Shammai. They often disagreed, debated, argued with each other, all for the sake of heaven, but they had a lot of disagreements about things. So it's recorded that whenever Hillel and Shammai would debate a point of Jewish law, Jewish ritual, Jewish custom, except for a handful of occasions, we always went according to Hillel's opinion. It's very interesting. They were contemporaneous, they lived in the same time, and it's about the first century, right around the destruction of the Second Temple in the year 70 by the Romans. So this teaching in teaching number 12 is coming from Hillel and Shammai. Receive from them. From who? Whoever's quoted in teaching 11, which we're not looking at today. We jumped from 7 to 12. But Hillel and Shammai learned it from those that were quoted in teaching number 11. Here's what they say. Hillel used to say, by the way, you may be aware, uh, on any college or university campus where Jewish people gather, students gather, faculty, for holiday celebrations, classes, whatever, they are most often called Hillel houses. A Hillel house. Oh, yeah, yeah, meet me at the Hillel house at 3. We'll have a coffee, whatever. And it's named for him because he was known as one of the great peacemakers, one of the great minds, easy to get along with. So I don't know why they call the original place on any university campus a Hillel house, but it definitely was named after this Hillel. Hillel, and again, number 12, Hillel and Shammai received from them. Hillel would say, be of the disciples of Aaron. Aaron, the brother of Moses and the brother of Miriam. Be of the disciples of Aaron. What does that mean to say? It means to say, be a lover of peace, be a pursuer of peace, be one who loves the creatures, in other words, God's creations, and be one who draws them close to the Torah. Excuse me. Interesting, this is now a 4-part teaching, right? We're used to the 3s. This is a 4-parter. Love peace, pursue peace, be one who loves all God's creatures, and draw them close to the Torah. So, a word about Hillel and Shammai. In the Talmud, you will find in one of the tractates, one of the large voluminous volumes, you will find 3 episodes of prospective converts who go to Shammai and Hillel and say, I will convert if you do the following. The most prominent story is that somebody goes to Hillel and Shammai and they say to them, I will convert if you teach me the entire Torah while I stand on 1 foot. That's quite a challenge, okay? 5,888 verses in the 5 books of Moses. While somebody is standing on 1 foot, teach them the entirety of that. Good luck. Good luck. Anyway, so there are 3 stories like that. A prospective convert goes to Shammai and Hillel. I will convert if you X, whatever. And this particular X is if you teach me the entire Torah while I stand on 1 foot. So in each of these 3 episodes, they first go to Shammai. Shammai was a builder and apparently also a mathematician. He takes these people in that come into his office or wherever he's meeting them. And when they come in with this kind of a request, teach me, I will convert if you X, whatever the X is, according to the version of the Talmud, he pushes them out of his office, let's say, with a builder's tool. That's the way he deals with them. He pushes them out with a builder's tool. Like what I don't know what a builder's tool is, but he shoos them out of his office. He doesn't even, he's dismissive, and one gets the feeling that he's very angry. Why? Well, you think, how sincere could you be if you want to learn the entire Torah while you stand on 1 foot? How sincere could you be about your conversion, is what Shammai might be thinking. Or in the case of the other 2 episodes, what, you're sincere about conversion only if this and this happens? You know, a conversion that comes with all kinds of conditions is not necessarily an acceptable conversion. You have to pour yourself into that tradition, etc., and not make conditions. I will become Jewish if I don't have to keep kosher. Well, good luck with that. Good luck with that. I will become Jewish if I don't have to observe the Sabbath. Well, have a nice day. Have a great day and be well. Anyway, so this is so they in the stories in the Talmud, they first go to Shammai. He shoos them away with a builder's tool, whatever that means. And then they go to Hillel because he's the other contemporary, the other great sage of the time. So Shammai doesn't give them a great hearing. Now they go to Hillel. And in this episode, Hillel is nonplussed, if that's the way you would put it, if I'm pronouncing it. Hillel says, oh, while I teach you the entire Torah on 1 foot, go ahead, lift your foot. And you may be familiar with the punchline. Hillel says to the gentleman, what is hateful to you, do not do to others. Now, that's what he says. What is hateful to you, do not do to others. That is the entire Torah. Hillel says, now go learn. That's the entire Torah on 1 foot. Now, not for now, but I could give you an hour on that one line. I don't know that I would be able to whittle down 5,888 verses into that one teaching. But Hillel took on the challenge. What is hateful to you, distasteful to you, do not do to others. That is the entire Torah. I'm just quoting it literally from the Talmud. Now go study. So these are the stories of people, prospective converts that go to Shammai. They get no hearing. They get shooed out. And then Hillel, they go to Hillel, and he extends his time. He's compassionate. He explains as well as he can why he can do that thing or not do the thing that they're requesting. But interestingly, the postscript of these 3 gentlemen that go to Shammai and then Hillel, The postscript in the Talmud is one day they all meet together. Like they're all they're all at Starbucks together. And they start talking about their experiences with Shammai and Hillel. When they talk about Shammai, as you can imagine, he was he was a little short-tempered, wouldn't you say, Bob? Yes, I think so, Hal. Is not so? And then they said, but boy, that Hillel. Boy, I'm just giving you a paraphrase of what they said. Hillel, with his patience, and Hillel with his kindness and his compassion on our desire to want to convert, it's because of him that we have enjoyed being under the presence of the Shekhinah, which is God's concentrated feminine presence. It's because of Hillel that we have enjoyed being brought under the wings of God's protective wings, if you will. So Hillel, this is the Hillel that is now saying, be of the disciples of Aaron. He was a lover of peace. And that's the way in the Torah Aaron is always characterized. Unfortunately, he had a little bit of a flaw. When Moses didn't come down from the mountain yet after the 40 days, the crowd is getting very, very impatient. And they ask Aaron to make something that's going to be a replacement for Moses. And he says, give me your rings, your bracelets, and everything else. And he fashions a golden calf. So in that episode, he might have been a little bit too quick to please. The sages have some things to say about that. But overall, the judgment about Aaron, who was the high priest at the time, brother of Moses, brother of Miriam, the judgment about Aaron was he was a fabulous, wonderful individual who not only loved peace, but the second part is even more important. He was a pursuer of peace. In Hebrew, he was an ohev shalom. Ohev shalom. He loved when people got along. He loved peaceful relations, cordial relations among people. But, he didn't just talk the talk. He also pursued peace. In Hebrew, not only ohev shalom, but rodef shalom. He pursued peace. The classic example given in our texts is that Hillel, Aaron, would notice people that just had a bad argument. They don't talk to each other. They were friends for years, and now they avoid each other, even in the supermarket. They're near the canned goods and they see each other, and both of them turn their cart in a different direction so as to avoid being with each other. He notices people who had just had a bad, ugly fight. He lets them simmer, and maybe the next day he would go over to one of them and he would say, I heard from your friend that you had an argument with. I heard that your friend would be very, very open to your asking for forgiveness. I heard your friend would be open if you asked for forgiveness. And then he would go over to the other gentleman and say, I heard from your friend that he would be open for forgiveness. What would be the bottom line? Both of them thinking that the other one is ready to forgive, they got closer and closer together, and that's one example of how Aaron would make peace among people. But interestingly enough, when Moses dies at the end of the 5 books of Moses, it says something like most of the people, most of the Israelites mourned him. Moses was not as popular as his brother Aaron. When it comes to the version in the Torah of Aaron dying, it says all the people mourned him for 30 days. So Moses, some or most. Aaron, his brother, all. And that's because he had that certain quality, that certain je ne sais quoi, that people loved him. They just loved him, put him on a pedestal. They knew to go to him, and he would know how to make peace. By the way, there are many synagogues across the world, and their name of the synagogue is Ohev Shalom, Congregation Ohev Shalom, congregation lovers of peace, or congregation Rodev Shalom, congregation pursuers of peace. Whether they love peace in that congregation or they pursue it is almost irrelevant, but that's their name. Their name comes exactly from this teaching, and again, that comes from Hillel. So Aaron was a great peacemaker. He brought people together. And the last part of his teaching is it doesn't seem to fit in the rest of it, but it's a very important teaching. He says, it says he was a lover of peace. He was a pursuer of peace. He loved God's creatures, which he loved everybody, Jew, not Jewish, whoever. He saw value in every person that God created. Within everybody, we as a Jewish people, I'm sure it goes to other faiths as well, we believe that everybody contains a spark of the divine. And Aaron loved that about every person. There's something divine implanted within each and every person that makes them godly. Now, can they, in their life, prove themselves not so godly? They can. But they begin with a very godly, God-oriented, God-seeking spirit. And that made him love everybody. Because why? Because God made them. God infused his spirit into all his creatures, so he loved everybody. I have to say that today, not anymore because it's sunset here in Israel, but today in the Jewish calendar is the third of the Hebrew month of Elul, E-L-U-L, and it is the anniversary, the 90th anniversary of the death of one of the greatest rabbis. He was the first chief rabbi of Israel, died in 1935, and his name was Rabbi Kook, K-O-O-K. I don't know if you've heard of him, read him, wrote a lot of stuff. Rabbi Abraham Isaac Kook, studied today all over the world, especially in Jewish schools, academies, Rabbi Kook. So today, the 3rd of Elul, this Wednesday, was the 90th anniversary of his passing. Why do I mention it? He was known exactly as Aaron is described. He was known as a lover of peace, a pursuer of peace. He loved all of God's creatures. He was not sectarian in his love of people, loved everybody. And in his lifetime did various things that showed his love for the Orthodox, what we would call today the Orthodox, conservative, reform, reconstructionist, humanist, whatever. He just loved God's creatures. And the last part of his teaching is, and he not only loved God's creatures, but he would draw them close to the Torah. Draw them close to the Torah. By the way, notice it doesn't say he would draw them close to Judaism. That wasn't necessarily his goal. But he understood that embedded in the teachings of the Torah is a way to buff and polish a person's character. No matter what religion, tradition, faith community you're in, that there's something about the teachings of the 5 books of Moses and beyond, the prophets, the writings, what we call the Tanakh, the full, what is often called the Old Testament. There's something in there that is valuable for the world beyond just for Jews. It's got universal lessons that everybody can study and benefit from. So one of the things that many of the sages draw their attention to is where it says, and he drew them close to the Torah. Say many of the sages, he drew them close to the Torah. He didn't draw the Torah close to them. What does that mean? He didn't diminish the Torah so that everybody could take a bite of it. He didn't make it into little nuggets and diminish them. He gave them the full flavor of the Torah, whatever the teaching was, and in that way looked to elevate them. In other words, he didn't take the Torah and its teachings and lower them to the level of the people. He wanted the level of the people to rise to the level of the holiness of the teachings. And that's a very, very big difference. How big is the difference? Within the Jewish community, the Orthodox traditional community is the one that mostly stays with the traditional way of doing stuff. This is how we understand the Torah, and this is how we keep it because our ancestors kept it this way. 100 years from now, they'll still keep it this way, etc., etc. We're sorry that the Shabbat morning services are longer than you like, but this is what we got. This is the service. What can I tell you? We're sorry that you, as a traditional observant Orthodox Jew, when you travel, you can't go eat in every restaurant. We know that. What can we do? This is what we have. What we have. As you get into other aspects of Jewish practice, which today are called conservative Jewry, or reform, reconstructions, etc., you find that they make more accommodations for the people that adhere to their brand, if you will, of Judaism. So I mentioned a couple of sessions ago that there is a Reformed temple in Baltimore that has a non-kosher caterer because the people wanted it. We don't want to just have kosher things. So if you're celebrating a bar mitzvah, bat mitzvah, a wedding in that Reformed temple, you can have lobster, shrimp, crab, ham. That's an eye opener, right? And the congregation has a rabbi. There's a rabbi. I knew the rabbis of that congregation, another Reformed, less traditional congregation. Lovely people. Got along with them very well. Lovely. But in using the lingo of this teaching, they brought the Torah down to the people because that's what the people wanted. And that's very different than kind of sticking to it and saying there's a wisdom here. And we're sorry you can't eat at every restaurant when you travel. And we're sorry that the Shabbat morning services take this long. And we're sorry that not every part of the Torah reading on Shabbat morning is going to sing and dance to you. But this is what we have, and this is what we propagate, and this is what we continue. So there's a big difference between bringing the Torah down to the people or elevating the people up towards the Torah. And that's exactly what he taught, that you have to elevate the people to the Torah and not diminish or minimize the Torah in the eyes of the people. So let me pause. If anybody has any questions, comments, we have about 5 minutes, which after the comments, questions, observations, I will just introduce what we're going to do the next time, and then we will finish. The next teaching is even more well-known. 100 average Jews, average education in a room, 100. And I would say, who knows teaching number 14? It's not exactly the next one, but number 14 that I'm going to just introduce before we end. 80 out of 100 will raise their hand. Oh, I know that. I've heard that. I know that. I've studied that. So number 14 is a biggie. This is a biggie, and that's why I'm anxious to teach it to you. But before I just introduce it to you, any questions about 12? Hillel, Shammai. By the way, Shammai is going to get his chance in a few teachings. Here's a teaching from Hillel. There's going to be another one, and then Shammai gets to be quoted with his teachings. So any question, comment, observation about number 12? Hillel, Shammai, prospective converts, bringing the Torah down to the people, loving peace, pursuing peace, loving all creatures.
Well, I would like to just share possibly that it sounds as though Aaron, although he had that little moment of indiscretion with the golden calf, he repented.
Yes.
And I think the other, other Jews saw that in him, and it made it so much more relatable. I think it was a lot easier. And again, just my opinion, but to be able to relate to someone like Aaron, who had made a mistake, but nevertheless, he was one of them. And it appears that that's why he was somewhat more relatable. And Hillel also sounds like the type of surge that the average person could relate to, because he was more, I think the average person would be able to talk to him as more opposed to Shammai.
I agree. I like that. I like that
That's my
observation.
opinion on
No, I never met either one of them.
that.
Okay. I never met Hillel, never met Shammai, never met Aaron. But I think you're right. The more human, even if it's an
Yes.
error, the more human
Yes.
somebody is, a leader is, the more you can walk with them, identify with them, the more you can feel with them, for them, etc. I think there's a lot to be said about that. It humanizes a person, you know. Very often our sages describe this great rabbi, or that great rabbi as never having done a sin in their entire life. And I have to be honest with you, and I say, I don't know. I don't know about that. And if they did, what would diminish them if they did? You know, if they're human. What if they did X, Y, and Z? Okay, they're human. So I think the relatability aspect is a good point, and I appreciate your bringing that up. Any other comment before I just touch with one swip of a brush on the canvas to introduce number 14? I'll just tell you what the teaching, excuse me, what the teaching is, and then we'll pick it up next week, unless there's any more comment on 12. Okay? If not, if you have something, you can write on the WhatsApp group, me personally, whatever. Here's number 14. He would also say, he who? Hillel. Hillel would also say. Now we're back to a three-part lesson. And again, this is just an intro. We'll pick it up next week, God willing. He would also say, if I am not for myself, who is for me? And if I'm only for myself, what am I? And here's part number 3, which is probably the best known part of this teaching. And if not now, when? Some like to teach it as there's a thread that weaves its way through all the 3 teachings. I'll mention that, God willing, next week. But this is something to think about for a week. If I'm not for myself, who is for me? What does that mean? Well, we'll discover a few things that it could mean. If I'm only for myself, if I'm not for myself, who will be for me? If I take it too far and now I'm only for myself, what kind of a person am I? And the last part, and if not now, when? I, I get excited about Pirke Avot because I love it. I love it. It just energizes me to know it, to study it, to teach it. There are so many delicious gems and nuggets in this volume of Pirke Avot, Ethics of the Fathers, that is just beautiful. I love sharing it. So, God willing, we will meet each other again next Wednesday, whatever your time, particular time is for my 8 p.m. here in Israel. And feel free to write, personal, on the list, whatever you like to communicate. Happy to hear from you. Let's pray for peace in Jerusalem, return of the hostages. Let's pray for the healing of the sick. We'll pray for all the wives and the children of those who are fighting in the reserves for hundreds of days in a row. We have a neighbor who was in the reserves 386 days in a row. And he's just one of the thousands like that. Imagine that. Family, job, income, wife, kids, away 386 days. So we hope for good news. As we say in Hebrew, we should only hear bisorot tovot, which means we should only hear good news, positive news. We should be able to witness God's miracles each and every moment, every day. And may this war be over as quickly as possible so we can get back to our lives. Anyway, thank you. Thank you. Amen. Thank you for joining us tonight, and have a great week, and we'll see you next week.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Thank you.
Thank you. My
Bye.
pleasure. Thank you. Be
Bye,
well.
everyone.
Shalom. Shalom, everybody. Bob, what are you working on now? What great wood project are you dealing with now?
Made some butterflies, but I don't know
Oh,
what to do with. And like here's one on my desk right here,
oh my, that's
and
gorgeous.
so I'm thinking of putting two of these together and making a plate with resin around them to make them one plate. And so I have one here and then one facing it here, resin all around it with live, real flowers in the resin.
Wow. So
And
what is it? What do you mean by a plate when you say a plate?
like a serving plate, like you could serve food on it or
Oh,
cookie or
oh,
whatever,
you
cheese and
like
cracker, like a small serving.
that? Wow, that's very beautiful. Do you know the Hebrew word for butterfly?
No,
Par.
par. Oh, yeah, par.
As opposed to
Maybe,
ham.
yeah. Maybe I'm part butterfly. Oh,
You never know.
I have one
There you
right here on my
go.
shirt
There you go. Par, ham.
and talked about things that could be, a friend or not a friend. Can you see
Yeah,
it?
what is the first? Oh, see the good. How do you like that? Is
Yeah,
there
can you
anything
see?
under? I just see the top. Is there anything written under it? Oh, look
No,
at that.
it's
Oh,
the
that's adorable.
and
Oh,
in
in all
all
things, see the
good and
good
all,
in all things.
and it's looking at the mushrooms.
Wow,
So they can become a friend or they could become not a friend, depending like the
that's
alcohol
true.
you're talking about.
Right, that's absolutely true. But you're a fun guy.
Yeah, I'm a fun guy.
Ay,
Yeah,
ay, ay.
really neat Netflix video about it's a documentary about mushrooms and the psyllium that grows like it grows all plants underneath the ground and it's amazing how they communicate to the trees and just all kinds of stuff.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's
Interesting.
really a neat video.
Beautiful.
All right,
All
enjoyed.
righty. Best to Valerie.
All right, and we will see you next week.
God willing.
All right.
Take care. Bye-bye now.
Bye, bye.